Alright, class, today we will be looking at poetry terms and meter in Shakespeare. This is just a taste of what is to come as we dive into Hamlet in the upcoming lessons and further examine that play and the different literary terms and devices used within his works. To begin, some of the most common poetry terms that can be found throughout his sonnets and plays are alliteration, assonance, enjambment, metonymy, synecdoche, and oxymorons. And let's go ahead and go back to alliteration. It's a very simple term to understand. It is the repetition of identical consonant sounds. Most often, the sounds at the beginning of words in close proximity. Examples include pensive poets or nattering nabobs of negativism. Other examples include the well-known tongue twisters such as Sally sells seashells down by the seashore. How many seashells does Sally sell? That is a very common example of alliteration, and you can pretty much find alliteration in most works. Even if it is two words, that still counts as alliteration. The next term we will be discussing is assonance. This is the repetition of identical vowel sounds in different words in close proximity. For example, deep green sea. As you can see, the deep and the green have the same sounds and they tie in together, and seeing as they are right after each other, that's where you get your close proximities from, and the vowels are the sounds that bring the words together and form the assonance. Moving right along, we'll next focus on enjambment. This is when a line having no end punctuation but it runs over into the next line. There's an example below, and this example reads, "We are such stuff as dreams are made of, and our little life is rounded with a sleep." As you can see, it runs on from "we are such stuff as dreams are made of," and that is where we have our first type of punctuation, which is a comma, and then it continues to run on in another set of enjambment and then ends with a period, which completes the thought. So even though the thought continues or they are two separate thoughts, it runs on because there's no use of punctuation, which means this is enjambment. The next term we will be looking at is metonymy. This is the substitution of the name of an attribute or an adjunct for what that thing meant. For example, in Hamlet, we will, as you've already seen and read, when they are discussing Claudius being the killer, the ghost says that the serpent that did sting thy father's life now wears his crown. Here, the ghost employs the word serpent instead of killer in a clear denunciation of Claudius, because as we know, Claudius is the killer, which means he is the serpent that is being referred to, and also discussed that did sting thy thy father's life. The stinging is the poison, and as we know, Hamlet's father was poisoned, which again, this is just another allusion to what happened to his father and why Hamlet is now acting the way he is. All right, moving right along, we are at synecdoche. This is a figure of speech in which a part is made to represent the whole or vice versa. Example, "No is an ever mixed mark that looks on tempest and is never shaken." And I encourage you to find examples of this in Hamlet on your own and to jot them down and bring them into our next class meeting. But here is the phrase "ever fixed mark" is referring to a lighthouse. I realize that quote is out of context, so it may have been hard for you to understand, but that is what it's referring to. It's referring to a lighthouse. Next, we will be discussing oxymoron. This is a figure of speech in which apparently contradictory terms appear in conjunction. Example, I must be cruel only to be kind, thus bad begins and worse remains behind. This is a quote from Hamlet, and the oxymoron is he's being cruel only to be kind. Cruelty and kindness are opposites and opposing terms. Therefore, that is an oxymoron. Other examples could be like beautiful mess. Messes aren't typically beautiful, but we sometimes throw the phrase together and therefore create an oxymoron. And now we will be shifting gears and looking at meter. What is meter exactly? Write down your thoughts on a piece of paper before you move on, and I'll give you a few seconds to do that. All right, now pause in your writing, and I'm going to discuss with you what meter is. Meter is the rhythm established by a poem, and it is usually dependent not only on the number of syllables in a line, but also the way those syllables are accented. The rhythm is often described as a pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables. In Shakespeare, the most common form of meter that you'll see is iambic pentameter. Penta means five, so as you can deduce, iambic pentameter is a line of verse with five metrical feet, each consisting of one short or unstressed syllable followed by one long or stressed syllable. For example, two households both alike in dignity. That is a quote from Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. It's one of the opening lines, but now I want you to write down that sentence and mark what you think is the stressed and unstressed syllables. Remember, the unstressed will come first and the stressed will follow. So take a moment, do that, and we'll go over it in class when you come in next. Alright, so we're going to specifically look at iambic pentameter and sonnets at this moment. I'm going to read to you Sonnet 18. It's one of his most well-known sonnets, and it is written completely in iambic pentameter. Alright. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometimes declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou oust, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou grow'st. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. All right, now this is one of his, like I said, one of his most famous sonnets, but let's break it down. Sonnet 18 is a typical English or Shakespearean sonnet. It consists of three quatrains followed by a couplet and has the characteristic rhyme scheme of A B A B C D C D E F E F G G. The poem carries the meaning of an Italian or Petrarchan sonnet. An example of iambic pentameter in the sonnet is, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Now, as you can see, I outlined that down for you in the slideshow so you can see what exactly is stressed and unstressed in those lines, because it's very important to understand what is going on there. All right, now we've gone over everything you need to know. Remember, guys, bring in your flashcards, write down those terms, and provide examples for each one so you'll be ready to go when we come into class. And now, before you come in, here's what I want you to do. I want you to read through Sonnet 18 yourself and follow example given in the previous slide to mark your stressed and unstressed syllables throughout the sonnet to bring in, and also bring in a passage from Hamlet and practice marking stressed and unstressed syllables in there as well. I want you to be as familiar with iambic pentameter as possible, as it is very important while reading his play. All right, thank you guys. I can't wait to see you in class. Have a nice day.